Welcome to the Pennywise Financial Podcast. This is Constantine here at Monarch Wealth Management, and I have a guest today. His name is Dr. Jay Zigmont from childfreewealth.com. Welcome to the show, Jay.
Thanks for having me.
So we chatted a little bit before the show, and I'm kind of jealous. I'm very curious. I like to start off with weather because it kind of sets the mood for me. Right here, we're in upstate New York, kind of dark, gray. What are you looking at?
So I'm in Nashville. It's gorgeous here, but I will tell you, 2 weeks ago, we had 6 inches of snow and it shut down the entire area. They only have 41 plow trucks for the entire area. 6 inches up your way is like an afternoon. We were shut down for a week. And, I grew up in Connecticut. I'm used to driving in the snow. And I was like, go and do my thing. But people have no clue. Like the whole place was shut down.
Oh, yeah. So I grew up in upstate New York, but I moved down to Jersey in Atlantic City, southern part of Jersey, and they have zero equipment. And the reality is they don't, maybe from time to time they'll get a couple inches here and there, but same scenario. They don't carry the equipment. Why would they? I mean, for that once or twice every couple of years, and it shuts down, it cripples the entire city.
Mm-hmm.
So I hear you. So Dr. J joins us from, I guess, Nashville area-ish,
Yep.
right? And your focus is a little different than I think most financial planners, or at least most that I know of that are colleagues. So why don't you tell us what separates you and what's so different about what you do?
Yeah, so I serve somewhere around 25% of the U.S. that are child-free or permanently childless, which means they don't have kids, aren't planning on having kids. And I'm not talking like, you don't have kids yet or you're empty nesting. I mean, like kids are never in the picture. And the interesting thing is people don't realize how big the population is. I mean, most people could never guess that 20% of the U.S. don't have kids, but almost all, really close to all financial planning assumes you have kids or you're going to. And it's all based around these, life cycles and passing money on to the next generation and all this, which are just gone. So when you take core principles out of financial planning, it changes just about everything.
Why is that? Why do you think that is? I mean, I see that you're a CFP, you have the credential, you've been through the coursework. What's the basis behind it? Is it a generational trend where, like in the past, a higher percentage of families traditionally just got married, had kids?
So when I was doing my CFP is actually when I started working on this, and I realized there was never once a mention of being child-free. It doesn't exist in any of the education. And if you look at even financial planning software, there's these assumptions built into it. For example, most child-free people want to die with zero. Well, Monte Carlo simulations are trying to figure out how not to die with zero. 32% of childless folks will never get married, but yet all financial software, really, you put a couple together, they're automatically married in the software. It does these things, and it's just these systematic biases really that are in there. And part of it is just there's a cultural norm. We call it the standard life script. The standard life script says you go to school, you get married, you have kids, you buy the house, you save for retirement, you pass it on. It's even what's called the American dream, the 2.5 kids, the white picket fence in the house. And it's just, there's so many more people saying now, I'm going to do my own thing for a variety of reasons. And we just haven't caught up to it.
Yeah, I know some is by choice and others are, I guess the trend is that people, the cycle of going to high school and getting a job. And so in upstate New York here, people at 15, 16 years old were working at Xerox or Kodak or General Motors, and they built a career there. They had a pension. They got married at 18, 19. They bought their first home at 20. They might have, celebrated a 10-year anniversary at 26, 27. And they had kids and they became grandparents in their late 30s, early 40s. And now people are going on to college. College is like a high school degree now.
Well, and I think part of it is a shift in where we are as a country, so I actually did some research on this, on why people choose to be child-free. And my wife and I are child-free. And the number one reason is just kind of never planned on having kids, didn't really want them. But then we get into things like finances and, medical issues and, politics and the environment and safety and a wide variety of reasons that there was just a standard norm. What you're talking about, like that, you grew up, you did this, what expected, that is still the cultural pressures. But people are now getting to their 20s and 30s and going, really? It's expensive to have a kid. Do I really want to? Is it what I want for my life? And the best answer I heard, and I'm not trying to get people to be child free or not, or have kids or not, but the best I ever heard was that if you're going to have kids, it should be two enthusiastic yeses. Both of you agree, yes, this is something we want to do. Not, hey, it's just kind of what we're expected to do, or hey, this is the norm, or whatever else it is. Because, people often ask child free people like, well, what if you regret it? And, that's fair. At the same time, I'd much rather regret not having a kid than regret having one, because that's just a nightmare. So what's happening is, as a society, we're starting to say, you could just be you, live your best life and enjoy it. But let's be real, finance is behind the times and we're just catching up to it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So with that focus, how's that kind of shaped the nature or the approach of your planning?
Yeah, so I do things completely different. I am what's called an advice-only planner, advice-only fee-only fiduciary. So I don't do investment management for my clients. I charge on a annual fee, and I don't charge a percent of assets, anything like that. And part of the reason I did that is we created a comprehensive, ongoing financial planning process, because child-free people, the way we say it, have time, money, and freedom to do what they enjoy. So their plans change all the time. Really, if you look at two parents' financial plans, they're very similar. The numbers are different, but the actual plan, the path you're following is very similar. With child-free people, not so much. And because the vast majority, probably 90% or better of people I worked with, want to die with zero, they've got to bring their net worth down over time. So it didn't work with like a percentage-based AUM model, because there's a conflict of interest. In a percentage-based AUM model, you want their assets to go up and the client wants their assets to go down. There's a huge conflict of interest. So I had to completely make a whole new structure and way to do financial planning because of the different lifestyle and different approach.
How long have you been doing this, this service model?
Yeah, a little over 2 years.
And how has it been perceived by your clients?
So clients love it. And it's, to the child-free folks, they go, I've tried this. About a third of my intro meetings end up in tears. And I couldn't figure out why. And I started asking people and talking through it. And what I heard was, it was the first time that clients truly felt heard and understood. There was something that fit them, matched them, that worked. And it works. I think the interesting thing has actually been watching some of the people in the financial community watch what I'm doing and go like, that doesn't work. You can't do it that way. Those are clients you can't, all the judgments come with it. But we've been lucky. We've had some great press. Market Watch called it the best new thing in retirement in 2022. Wall Street Journal did a whole page on it. CNBC, because there's not much innovation in financial planning. Let's be real on that. And it's one of the few areas that's innovative.
So you said that over the population, it's about 20 to 25% are childless?
Of the U.S.
Of the U.S. Wow, I didn't realize it was that high.
So give you a comparison, and we don't have great national stats. There's a great study out of Michigan that looked at this. They found about 20% of adults identify as child-free, meaning they don't have kids, don't plan on having kids, and it's by choice. About another 5% were not by choice. So they tend to call themselves childless, whatever that works. In comparison, in that same study, they found something like just shy of 8% of the population was LGBTQ+. So when I explain this to people, I'm like, hey, we're 3 times the size of the LGBTQ+ community. People, it doesn't make sense because they never heard of us. That we even exist. And what it is we're out there. We're just not, well known or well understood. And let's be real, in this political world, being child-free is something some people can't talk about. I'm deep in the South, and down here, it's not politically correct to talk about.
Yeah, I can imagine. We do have some clients that have made that choice, and almost felt guilty about it. It's weird because you hear that conversation. They were kind of embarrassed. They danced around the question, and then people feel kind of awkward engaging in conversation with them because it comes up, and it's like, hey, when you got married 5 years ago, when you gonna? And it's like, well, that's really none of your business,
right? And I did some research on this. I asked before I started, I asked people, hey, what was your experience with financial planners? And most of it was pretty bad. Like, they're like, well, we're just going to plan like you have kids and, you'll change your mind. Or like people start putting judgments or they start asking questions. And I've had people kind of beat me up and like, well, why are you child free? I'm like, listen, my wife has a 50-50 chance of dying if she gets pregnant. That made our choice pretty simple. And people go, oh, maybe I shouldn't have asked you that question. I'm like, no, you shouldn't have, but they still do. And the challenge is, for your clients, making it okay to say, hey, yep, I'm child free. And what I tell everybody to do is ask your planner, okay, if you're child free, how does that change your plan? And most planners go, I don't know. And I'm okay with I don't know. If they say it doesn't change it, that's a big issue.
So let's talk about the way that you measure success. What's kind of the majority of what the segment of the population that you're working with define as success? It's not the same. It's not leaving money to heirs. It doesn't sound like.
No. So we talk about impact, and we're not leaving a genetic legacy, if you want to call it that. What happens instead is child-free folks tend to embrace what we call financial independence, live early, where they are investing in themselves and their lives and optimizing for the right work at the right time at the right level throughout their life. So, for example, a lot of child-free folks have small businesses or things they want to do, passion projects, other things, where having the highest net worth or retiring is not the goal, but more, how do I find something I enjoy to do throughout your life? We actually look at it as much like Marie Kondo in your life. We're trying to optimize for joy. How much joy can you get from life? Get rid of the things that don't bring you happiness and do more of the things that do. For example, one of the top downloaded episodes of our podcast actually is I'll Make You Quit Your Job, because we have a lot of folks that are, and I'm sure you have clients like this too, they're making nice salaries, 6 figures, doing well, but they're miserable. I'm like, cool. So quit and do something else. And they're like, well, I can't. I'm like, yes, you can. You can choose, because you're not worried about passing on money to generation. You're not worried about your net worth. You could choose to take a salary that's half as much to be happier in your job and happier in what you do. And that's a huge mind shift.
How did you get started in this? Like, what was the driving force behind, a few years back, you saying, this is really a segment of the population that needs help, that needs my help?
Yeah, I didn't really start there. I started with, so my wife and I are child free. And the question I started asking was, how weird are we? Now, mind you, we're both PhDs, so we're a little weird by nature. Like, we'll sit around the dinner table talking about research studies. Like, we're a little weird, okay? Let's just be honest on that. But I wanted to know, are we like the only people out there? I didn't even know the term child free existed. And I started diving into this, and on Reddit, they have a subreddit for child free people. It was like 1.5 million people there. It's like, wow, we're not the only ones. And I started doing research on this. And I did research for my first book, Portrait of Child Free Wealth. And I started doing surveys and interviews and all this. And what became so obvious was there was a huge need for something different. And our chief marketing officer calls it this way. We're doing category creation. We're not iterating financial planning. We're doing something that doesn't exist. And as you started diving into this, you see there's such a huge need for a product that serves huge population. I mean, if you look at in the US, there's about somewhere between 4 and 5 million millionaires in the United States that are child free. They need a specific financial planning process for them. They're not getting it. From a marketing standpoint, like, I might be able to serve 1% of them, and I'd probably be one of the largest RIAs in the country. It's when you look at the numbers, I'm out here. I've been doing this for a couple of years, and I did article at Kitsis and a few other places. I'm saying other firms need to come serve this population, because there's no way I can serve them. So, it's one of those huge needs. And you're like, you see the need, you see the gap, you might as well step into it.
Yeah, that's pretty unique. I mean, I guess I never really gave it much thought. I guess a lot of the planning community thinks the same way. Like you say, it's that same old logic and technology and systems that we have in place that plan for that. And the natural progression seems to be, hey, we get married, we have a family, we buy a house, and we live the American dream. But that dream is not the same for everyone.
Let me call you out on this. You just used a word. You said, and we have a family. Well, we have a family. It just doesn't involve kids. But that's a
Correct.
great example of the loaded language that has assumptions in it. When you said family, you really mean the American dream with kids is where you were there, where we're saying, no, we have alternative family structures, whatever that is. You know, some people have pets, some people don't. Sometimes we have people that are living in groups, you know, got the Golden Girls type setups. We got people living alone, you know, I mean, all different types. And all of those assumptions, you outline things and, you know, it's all built into financial planning. And it takes so long to help people to see, hey, they're living a different life and it's okay. And it changes everything about it.
Yeah, absolutely, it does. I can see how that segment may say, geez, you know, we feel like maybe not even I people don't recognize or understand maybe our perspective.
So
Wow.
I'll give you one because you're in the New York area. So August 1st is International Child Free Day. People don't know that exists. You know, it's kind of like Mother's Day or Father's Day. It
I,
exists. And we sponsored a billboard in Times Square celebrating what it's like to be child free. So we did a big push on this, and we got people talk about their child free life on the billboard, this and the other. And we did it as a community outreach. It was a great event. But then people online were like, oh, you're part of a globalist propaganda to depopulate the world and a psyop. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, all I'm saying is you know, today's our day and we're excited about it. And people over here judging. And it's like, okay, fine. You know, like I'm not going to get into the middle of the internet haters, but that's what we're dealing with. And let's be real, in the financial community, it's not much better. I mean, I went to buy software for my company. And one of the common things asked is, who do you serve? I said, I serve child-free people. And the software company, I mean, one of their C-level officers says, oh, so you hate kids. And I'm like, dude, like, I mean, it's like saying, hey, I serve women. So like, oh, so you hate men. No, like you just don't make those judgments. But that is the stuff that comes out.
So if you don't have a dog or a cat, you must hate animals. Yeah, no, I see where you're going. I mean, the problem with any of those avenues, when you advertise, vocalize, publicize anything where the general public can look at it and make a comment, almost like a faceless comment, especially social media. Social media for us, you could celebrate the happiest day of your life, and people are going to pick that apart and say, Dr. J, why? You know, and it's just like they can't be happy for you.
No, and I have more people praying for my soul than you know what to do with. Because I always get that. Oh, I'm praying for your childless soul. Because I'm in the South, and I'm like, okay, cool. Keep me in your prayers. Like, I mean, what do you want me to say? You know, I had somebody. This is my favorite. I was posting about something we do, and they go, "You all agreed for social programs, so you need to have kids, so we have taxpayers and warriors for the future." I'm like, what? First of all, I didn't make those policies. And then be like, well, you're going to destroy Social Security because you're not having kids. I'm like, listen, Social Security's got its own problems. I'm not the problem in Social Security. But like, these are the judgments that just come out.
So now I'm glad I know who to blame. It's Dr. J for the failure of Social Security. Okay, I'm glad we got that ironed out. Wow.
I mean, you build a retirement system, let's call it that, for Social Security that is based on constant growth. Well, you're going to have problems if the growth goes down. That does not mean that we need to have kids just to keep paying for Social Security. Like, it means the system has problems.
That's right. And I think for people to be conscious of that decision, like you said, I mean, it's a choice. And you know, I know some parents that I think, you know, maybe regret it. And especially in the younger generations, when they had kids 16, 17, they weren't mentally prepared, certainly not financially prepared. So there's a reliance on the parents, the grandparents, the child, you know, to help and care for that child. And that kind of shapes, and that's what I think about too, is the next generation. This is the generation that's going to be, you know, filling the leadership roles that will be, I mean, when you and I are old and gray, and coming up with the policies in place to help rule and dictate the direction of the country. so I hope there's some thought in there. And parenting is a whole nother topic. I mean, I could get into that. We have one son. I'll share my story after the break. But yeah, so it's I think it's a conscious decision. I think that a lot of people don't think about, and they're not sensitive to that when engaging in a conversation. When you think or assume something should just happen.
Yeah, and I'll often ask people, kind of whose voice is in your head saying you got to do this? And it's culture, it's religion, it's family, it's others that are pushing this. And then I'll ask them, what do you want to do? And they're like, well, nobody's ever asked me that question. I'm like, do what you want, follow your passion. I mean, you said one son?
One son.
Do you want him to follow the standard script, or do you want him to follow his passion?
No, absolutely passion.
Well, that's a great example of, okay, so he may follow a different path. And the hard part as a parent is going, that's okay.
Yes.
Yes. I'm not a parent, so I know nothing about that, but that's the challenge. And as a society, especially with social media world, where there's so much pressure to conform to a norm, to the standard life script, that anybody that's got a little deviation from it, they're like, oh, there's a problem. No, there's not. It's just following their passion like you want your son to do. It's just millions of us choosing a different path.
I think this is a good place. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back with the show. Do you want help building and managing an investment portfolio that's right for you? One that will help you maximize growth potential while you're saving, help you generate income when you need it most, and eventually preserve what you've saved to leave to your beneficiaries? We do this day in and day out and take the stress and responsibility of making those decisions off your plate. Subscribe to our newsletter, read our blog post, and listen to our podcast to get a flavor of how we do things. Our firm is unique and capable of handling all your investment and insurance needs. Monarch Wealth Management, our guidance, your future. Welcome back to the Pennywise Financial Podcast. Constantine here at Monarch Wealth Management, and my guest today is Dr. Jay Zigmont from childfreewealth.com. Welcome back to the show, everyone. And we heard a little bit about what Dr. Jay does and who he serves, kind of the passion driven behind that, and some of the challenges that his clientele have faced over the years. It sounds pretty rough. And I like the fact that you're addressing that need, that niche. It's definitely a niche, and hearing the percentage of the population that made this choice. I want to share my story because my story could have been a little bit different. I'm what you might define as middle-aged, mid-40s, approaching 50. And the majority of my friends in my network are younger families that have children, and colleagues in my age group have kids now that are in college. And I have a 6-year-old son, and he means the world to me. But I'll tell you, my wife and I did not have a very traditional path. We were married later in life, and we were friends first. That was the core of our relationship, and it was all about us. And getting married necessarily was not one of my main goals, and she was kind of the same. It was a decision we made long after we had been living together, and there's a number of reasons why, but it wasn't the traditional one that you might think. And then, we decided that we wanted to have a child, and that decision carried us through a very, very long journey of heartbreak and heartache and time after time and money, so being denied this kind of right that you would think that most people by nature will have come to them. If you get married and decide to have kids, great. It happens like magic. It does not happen like magic for everyone. So cliche. I mean, this was literally our last chance at whatever medical procedure it's called. We've went through so many different things and underwent testing, and come to find out we did have this miracle child. And if it didn't happen for my wife and I, we definitely considered adoption because it was important to us. Our progression, our path was more beyond just money and doing well for ourselves and enjoying that life that we have. And we have great times, but I wanted to give back to the next generation, and I wanted to raise a son that I could be proud of and give him a lot of the things that maybe I didn't have. I don't mean tangible things like, hey, look at this great new race car or great, nothing like that, but maybe some intellect, some guidance, and raising somebody who, could carry on some of the good traits to the next generation. And that's really what I hope for. But Dr. J, I can't imagine. And there has to be, out of that 25% of, or 26%, whatever that number is right now, of child-free couples, there has to be a segment that thought they might want to be a parent that just never happened, and it changed the course of things. And I could see how people would get discouraged, and maybe adoption was not for them. And then you're okay. You kind of shift the focus on what happiness looks like. Am I right?
So the study found about 20% of the U.S. or of Michigan in this study are child-free by choice, and 5% are childless, not by choice. And when you're childless, not by choice, which is kind of the path you were on, and then the community would call it a rainbow child. It just magically happened. At the end, it did work out. If you're going to be in that childless community, we actually look at it as you need to grieve the loss of the life you were going to live before you can move forward into a child-free life. Because what happens is, if you wanted to have kids and you can't, envisioning a life without kids is nearly impossible until you've been through the process. And it literally is a grieving process. You go through, well, let me try this, let me work through this. It didn't work. We do the bargaining, denial, acceptance, the whole process. And I'll tell people when they reach out to us, I'm like, look, if you're still in the grieving process, or you're still trying to have kids, we're not the right planet for you. Because we're going to be talking about a life without. It's not to saying one's better or worse. It's just different. But if you're still kind of like hanging on, you're like, I'm not sure. In the community, we jokingly call them fence sitters. Like, they're not sure if they're going to have kids or not. Cool. I'm not the right planet for you. Follow the standard plan. Where we come in is when you don't have kids and you aren't planning on having kids. Whether or not it was by choice or not doesn't change the financial part of it or the life planning, but it changes where you came from and understanding that and being, and working through that. And what you'll find is online, there's a lot of good communities for this. And I'll be honest, women get it a lot harder than men. So there's a lot of good communities for women to work through the process. There's not as much child-free or childless men coming together online to work through it. But it's a social pressure. It's different things. I mean, I had somebody who worked for me. I was in healthcare. She stops me in the hall and she says, I've been thinking about you and your wife. You're really smart. You need to have kids. And I'm like, who in the world do you think you are to be stopping your boss? Like, essentially you just stopped me and said, hey, I'm thinking about your sex life. I mean, that's kind of, but I'm like, who are you to say that? And I told that story to somebody once and they were like, did you tell HR about that? And I'm like, we were in HR.
Wow.
But what happens is, your story is a great example of, hey, you've been through it, you worked through it, it worked the way you wanted. Cool. There are other people that choose not to do that path at all. And there are other people that, not by choice or by circumstances, they don't have what they want. We just have to figure out, okay, what's that next 40 years of your life look like if it didn't go the way you had planned?
So I want to hear more about the process. So we talked a little bit about what the end goal looks like. What's the middle part, the planning process? So guiding these people through, let's say, their mid to late 30s throughout retirement. What does that look like? Like, if you're not doing the money management, do you help guide them in there, coach them? Do you work with money managers like us, or how does that work?
So we have what we call the 8 No Baby Steps program. It's kind of the opposite of the Ramsey 7 Baby Steps program. And, we happen to embrace a debt-free philosophy. Once we get out of debt, that's for kind of first 3 steps. The fourth is save and invest for your future. Now, you'll notice that's terminology intentional. And what we're saying is, sometimes the investment in you is a better investment than investing in the market. Or, for example, buying a house is a choice for child-free people, not a requirement. If you're going to move every 2-3 years, it makes no sense to buy. I've got people that are going to rent their entire life, and it's just, we give them exposure to real estate in a different way. What we do from an investment standpoint, we follow simple, passive, long-term investing, 3 funds, the whole US, the whole world, and some bonds, set it and forget it. And what we do is we'll literally have them log into their Vanguard, Fidelity account, whatever, tell them buy this, sell this, but they own the account. They maintain it. They control it. We provide advice. We don't manage it for them. So what's happening is, and I think part of this is a cultural shift, is the younger generations are less likely to be like, here, let me just hand you my money and you do it all for me.
True.
Instead, we're more at the guide at the side versus doing it for them. We say we do it with you. We will work through, all right, what's your investment strategy? Where we're going? Do we need to adjust it? We'll figure out your 401ks, all that. Doesn't matter. And to us, the other bonus of that is we don't have to own the assets, have to manage them. So sometimes when you get to people that are money managing or AOM model, clients will hide money from you. Well, you don't have them at all, or you don't have the full picture. You got part of it, their 401ks held away. We manage it all. But what we'll do is we'll do it with them. So our rules are you only invest in things you understand. So we will take the time to help them to understand it. Most of the general kind of financial literature will say about 80% of your success with money is your behaviors. About 20% is the actual numbers. So we spend 80% of our time on the behaviors. The way I say it is we're actually a learning organization. We help people learn how to manage their finances that does financial planning. So we're with our child-free folks, their plan. I had somebody literally in a year, 3 complete different sets of goals, different career path, was going to go be a pilot and going to go start a business all in 1 year. The only way you deal with clients that are changing that much is you teach them, you help them to learn how to manage their money so that it can adjust. We make sure the foundation's strong, work that through, and then make that part of the process.
How granular do you get? I mean, is it I don't know. I heard you mention Ramsey, and so now I'm trying to not correlate your program and what you do for your clients in that way. Are you going through like a budget calculator to say, okay, here's the income, here's the expenses, the living expenses, your house, your car, insurance, and then here's your expenditures. Here's the fluff, and here's the way to save. And it sounds like it's a path to being debt free first. It's one of the primary goals, right?
So we're a comprehensive program. We'll do the full cash flow. Depends on what they need. We're trying to diagnose and treat. So some people have good handle on their money, some people don't. I'm sure if you ask your clients what's your monthly expenses, they give you a guess. But let's be real, it's not what it really is. No. And I've actually tracked it. We spend more time with our clients talking about spending money than saving money. Because remember, if you're trying to die with zero, if you've been frugal your whole life, you've been a great saver, we need to change your mindset and say, spend money. Like we have this thing we talked about that we call it the blueberry problem. And we have people, whatever, they got $5-10 million. They're in their 50s, 60s. They're not going to run out of money. And they're buying the frozen blueberries because they're $1 cheaper than the fresh blueberries. And I'm like, just buy the damn blueberries. I mean, seriously, you're fine. But what happens is we've been taught, you got to save, you got to script and save, you got to put this aside. We have to change it. We have clients where we're going, okay, cool. Your goal for the year is to spend $150,000 for travel and $150,000 for giving. And they're like, wait, what? Where we're actually setting goals for spending money rather than savings. We follow kind of a guardrails approach on that, but we're trying to say, your goal is to die with zero. If you're going to give money, give it now when it impacts lives rather than when you die, because you're not going to get tax savings there. We want you to spend the money on expenses. On experiences. We want you to enrich the lives of people you want to serve. So like we take care of our nephews and we have 529s for them and all that. And the way we say it is they're going to get our money that's left over. If they get 10,000 or 100,000, that's fine. If they get $1 million, we made a mistake because we should have blessed their lives earlier than when we die. And if you actually look at the data, you were talking about, giving back and other things. The philanthropy organizations know who child-free people are because they found that the giving rate is much higher. It just is. And if you want to know a group that knows how to market stuff, that's, they know how to beg for money. Like, let's be real. And they've already identified, hey, we're a good source of money. But then we go from, all right, here's your budget, here's your investing. Next, we go into insurance and saying, all right, life insurance, not a priority for child-free folks. Disability insurance, huge priority. Long-term care, how are you paying for it? Long-term care insurance, how are you doing that? We'll build that out. We go into the next area, which is actually even harder, which is the estate planning. Who's going to be your power of attorney, your medical power of attorney, financial power of attorney, executor when you don't have next of kin? It's a huge question for child-free people. Then we go to our no baby step 7, which is planning for your parents. How are you taking care of your parents and your family members that you may have the responsibility? Because often the child-free folks, because they get well, you don't have kids, so you can take care of mom. These expectations, rather than the grandparents helping to raise the kids, our child-free folks are helping to take care of their parents and grandparents. Then we finally get to dying with zero. So we have a process that goes through their entire life, and we meet regularly with them, just about once a month. And we're working through these issues. We're working through 1 or 2 issues at a time so that they feel comfortable about it and they can make it work for them.
Wow, you brought up a lot of good points that I guess I wouldn't have even thought of. There's some assumptions there, implied connotation that if you're child free, you can take care of mom and dad. First, they got you married, then they had you having kids when you didn't vocalize any of that, and now you're taking care of parents because you decided you didn't want to have kids. Great. Here's a thought. Would you say the child-free status gives folks more financial freedom, or does it create more anxiety?
So it's 2 different parts of this. So the actual data looks at this. There's this belief that like if you're child-free, like a check runs down from the heaven and like you're automatically rich. That is not true. All right, just because you're not paying for kids doesn't mean you're good off or whatever. I got people that are struggling, and the way I say it is, if they're barely keeping their heads above water, and if they had a kid, they would drown. Okay, so it's not necessarily you become rich. The way we do say it is living a life of child-free wealth means you have time, money, and freedom to do what you enjoy. So financial independence is a big part of it. The problem is they actually get to a point we call the child-free midlife crisis. The child-free midlife crisis is when you hit your personal, professional, and financial goals, and then you're like, now what? And what happens for parents, and you actually just gave it in your story, you got to a certain point, hey, we were doing good, we're doing our things, we wanted to then give on to another generation, now I'm taking care of my son, make sure he has the right things, he has the right upbringing. Well, when you don't have that, where to shift your goals to, it becomes hard to figure out, well, what's the point of life? Where are we going? What are we doing? What does it matter? What is our impact? It's that self-actualization questions that, when you have too many options, can actually be analysis paralysis or a paradox of choice of like, well, I ask my clients all the time, don't care what age, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they're like, I have no clue. And that's the question we get to answer.
Wow, I gotta say, I'm just I guess I'm floored. I didn't realize, and you're pretty much, are there any other planners that do what you do? Not that I know.
As far as I know, we're the only firm dedicated to serving child-free folks. There are some other people that are child-free or help, or the other places we'll see people that help child-free people are people that have like alternative lifestyles. So like one of my colleagues, her niche is serving people who live in tiny houses. Well, tiny houses and child-free kind of go together, but not necessarily as a primary focus.
It's pretty cool. Thought-provoking, different perspective. In closing, one last thing you might want to share, any tips for folks that you might be looking to serve, any reluctancy for people to want to reach out? What have you found is one of the biggest hurdles, I guess, for folks to try to reach out? They might be thinking about a past experience they had with another advisor that made these assumptions, they're going to have kids, or kind of push that. Like, what do you, any last minute thoughts in closing?
You said it. I think the challenge is right now in the overall financial world, you can find a financial planner that serves people like you. There's people that serve a niche of everything. Now I'm looking at your Top Gun poster. There's a guy that just all he does is Air Force pilots, fighter pilots. That's all he does. That's what he does. There's a niche for everybody. Find the person that serves people like you. And if you found people in the past that don't serve people like you, just kind of gotta go, yep, they weren't right for me. We all have like restaurants. We like that restaurant. We don't like this restaurant. It's not saying, hey, this restaurant was bad, so all restaurants are bad. I think in the financial world, we do get painted with that brush. And my advice to people that are child-free is always ask the financial planner, how is your plan different because you're child-free? If they don't have an answer, you probably need to turn around and walk out. And I'm sorry to be harsh, but if they're going to put you into a cookie cutter product, so keep in mind, like financial advisor, people call themselves financial advisor. I have people go to insurance agents and they're child free and they get sold a giant life insurance policy. I'm like, No, like this is
no.
bad. But, that's the only product they sell. So therefore, it's the hammer and nail routine. So you want to ask, do they serve people like you? People come to me all the time and they go, I'm weird. And they'll outline their whole thing. And I go, you're 100% normal in the people I serve. You may be weird if you went to Constantine and like explained your story, not because Constantine doesn't know you or understand. It's just doesn't serve that same population. At the same time, you come to me and you say, hey, I got 6 kids and I'm trying to figure out college planning. No, like I'm not the right person for you. It's just not who I serve. And there's so many choices out there. There's no reason to settle for, they kind of get me. Or the other one I get, which is, well, my dad went to this person for the past 2 decades. So I need to, I'm like, no. But I had somebody, I got to tell you a story. So I had somebody inherited a bunch of money. And one of the large wirehouses came to, explain the money to them and what was going on, this money they got in the truck. And they're like, these 3 guys in suits come out, blah, 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 blah. No clue what they said, had no clue about me, no clue about my life. I just want to take all the money and burn it. And I was like, yep, I get what you're saying. But like, that is what people are experiencing because that's just the standard process. And if you're living a different life, you need to match you.
I like that. Really great conversation. Dr. Jay Zigmont from Child Free Wealth. You can visit him at childfreewealth.com. I think that would be a good starting point. Am I right, Dr. Jay?
Yep. And you can grab the Child Free Wealth podcast everywhere you get podcasts.
That's awesome. I'm going to make sure we have links in the bio, in the comments and description of the podcast. Thanks again for listening today. And thanks again, Dr. Jay.
Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to Pennywise Financial, brought to you by Monarch Wealth Management. Constantine and David really care about their clients. They want to make sure you're happy, so you'll continue to hire them. There's no commitments, and clients are free to leave whenever they want. Think about being able to pick up the phone and call someone for guidance and advice on almost anything, from buying a car, selling a home, buying vacation properties, or even selling a business. Reach out on the website at monarchwealthmanagement.com. There are 2 offices in Rochester and 2 offices in Buffalo. Reach out to us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube, or call us toll-free at 800-480-1580. That's 800-480-1580. Until next time, this is Pennywise Financial, signing off.
The opinions voiced in this program are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial advisor or tax advisor prior to investing. Securities are offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA, and SIPC.